Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. I am your host John, and today here on the channel we're going to start our reviews for the first 6 James Bond Sean Connery films that just came out on 4K Blu-ray from Warner Brothers, and we're going to review each of them individually. So today that means we're going to be starting it off with the one that started it all, 1962's Dr. No. So if you're here just for the 4K Blu-ray review and you don't want to find out anything about the film, you guys can skip ahead to that 4K Blu-ray review right now. So back in 1962, Terrence Young released to the world through United Artists 007 James Bond's Dr. No. Now, this isn't the first book in Ian Fleming's very famous, James Bond series. No, this is actually the 6th book, I believe. Casino Royale was the first book, and that was adapted for a TV film, but of course, James Bond was American. It really wasn't a true 007 film. This was the one that really started all. We got Sean Connery here. For a lot of people, Sean Connery is still James Bond. He's still the best to ever do it. And can you blame him? He's got the look. He's got the charm. I mean, he's truly James Bond. And the Dr. No film is really where we got to see the bones of the franchise. Like, this isn't necessarily the best James Bond film in my opinion, but without this, we don't get the formula that would become the James Bond franchise. This is where we get the opening gun barrel sequence. This is a huge deal. It's the first time we ever do this. We get the opening credits, the very stylized opening credits for Dr. No before we kick into the film. We don't really have the cold open yet that we would establish more in like Goldfinger. That's not really there yet, but this is the first time you ever hear the James Bond theme, and you hear it throughout the film because the person who invented the theme also did the score for this film. So a lot of stuff you'd expect. You get M. This is also where we get the Walter PPK. We get that right in one of the opening scenes of this movie. It replaces James Bond's Beretta that he was very comfortable with. They're using it for like 10 years, but it's got some jamming problems, and M's like, hey, you know what? You gotta use this now, so he decides to take that. We see Moneypenny for the first time. So a lot of firsts. We get the first Bond girl in this film. Some of the most iconic shots in the entire franchise are in here. The first ever mention of Spectre. It's just that, this is really like a proof of concept in a lot of ways, because we could see James Bond. We could see James Bond saying Bond. James Bond, for the first time. The introduction to James Bond for me is still iconic in that casino.
Bond. James Bond.
It's just that the plot of this movie isn't the most interesting. We're trying to find out who's jamming radars, because in Jamaica, the guy was sent there from MI6, he gets assassinated, so does his secretary. So James Bond's got to go there and investigate. And it's very interesting for the most part, especially in the first third of the film. People are trying to kill him. Why? But when Bond heads over to the island and we get him and Honey Ryder, who is dubbed in this movie, and it's also very noticeable. She apparently just wasn't a very great actress, but you can notice that she is dubbed. They just spend a lot of time on the island with these two, and I don't know, it kind of drags the movie a little bit. It just doesn't have the right pacing. Of course, it is 1962. We do have some really scary moments, but also there's just some moments where it's just the movie starts to drag a little bit. It's not paced very well, and I understand it's also a 1962 film, so that's kind of part of it. And then, Dr. No, he's great. He's got that perfect voice. He's obviously the radiation killed his hands. He's a very iconic villain in the franchise. Again, setting up Spectre. He's got his own plan. He's a super villain through and through. Clearly, Austin Powers lifted so much from this movie, especially towards the end, in that pool. That's very similar to the end of Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery. I mean, the suit that Dr. Evil's wearing with the clear headpiece is exactly the same thing that Dr. No is wearing in this. You just don't feel as threatened by Dr. No. This feels like a very kind of a minimalist mission, mainly because the film cost $1 million to make. I mean, the early James Bond films, if you've ever watched me and David, aka Shamrock Ball's show, the Let's Talk Movies podcast, we've done a few James Bond films together. Me and Matt back in the day did do Dr. No, but we talked about how these movies didn't get huge budgets. They made the most of the budgets. This was a $1 million film to make, and it made $59 million. So, of course, there's a lot of, kind of production issues, but still, the set design is beautiful, especially at Dr. No's base. We'll talk more about that when we get into the 4K Blu-ray. One thing I always appreciated about Dr. No was just how beautiful it looked. They didn't just film on location in Jamaica, which they did, but they filmed in Pine Lawn Studios, one of the most famous studios in the world, especially for the James Bond franchise, and they made good use of that. Very beautiful set design, good costume design. James Bond, the ladies' man, is here, but he's not the ladies' man we would know, especially in the films going forward. He's still that charming guy that all the ladies love, but we don't really get to see him, swinging that around yet. He's not banging out the one-liners. The closest we get is when the hearse, goes off the cliff, and he's like, I guess they were going to a funeral. If this was, a few years later, he would have said, they were going to a funeral and then would have lit up a cigarette. It's just a different time for this film. It's really the one we need to start the franchise. I just wouldn't say that this is the greatest film in the James Bond franchise. There was a time when this was in my top 10 Bond films, but, I've since cooled on it, especially if you watch them all in order. You can just really see the bones of a James Bond film here, but it's just not quite what the franchise would become. But it's a necessary evil. You absolutely need to see this film if you've never seen it. It's definitely one you don't skip. It's the first appearance of Felix Leiter as well. So there's a lot of stuff in here that, I think you would definitely love. But if you're somebody who doesn't like older films and you can't really stand like rear projection and stuff like that, and, slower pacing, you might not love this one. But I still do think it's absolutely necessary to the James Bond franchise, because without it, we wouldn't have all these films all these years later, and we wouldn't have one of the greatest franchise to ever be produced. So it's very necessary. I still think it's very important. Just don't go into this thinking it's one of the greatest Bond films ever made. Some people do think that. Me personally, I've definitely cooled on it, but I could still highly recommend it. Now let's talk about this 4K Blu-ray that just came out from Warner Brothers.
The exotic and tantalizing Dr. No.
So here it is. I had to get this one. You guys know I'm a huge James Bond fan. It's one of my favorite franchises. I would say this is either my first or second favorite franchise of all time. I go back and forth. It's so hard to pick a favorite sometimes. But James Bond has always been one of those franchises that I've absolutely loved. There was a reason why I wanted to start a James Bond show here on the channel, because I love James Bond. So when the Sean Connery 6-film collection got announced, and they announced this beautiful 4K steelbook collection in the steelbook housing that Warner Brothers has done in the past. They've used this exact same housing for the Batman franchise way back in the day. I don't know if they did the Rambo films, but the Rambo used a very similar packaging as well. So this isn't something brand new or unique, but I do love what they did with this. I mean, it just really blends into what the old steelbooks used to look like in the Daniel Craig collection, having like, the glossy semi-finish on the 007 logo while, keeping the matte black finish on it. And then, of course, each film has their own steelbook. So I'm going to review each film individually. So today we're just going to go in here and we're going to pull out Dr. No. And Dr. No is right here. They're leaning into, this is the Sean Connery collection. That's why his face is on the front. On the back, you get him and Honey. Obviously, that is one of the most iconic Bond girls of all time, mainly because of that outfit. It was spoofed in the Austin Powers franchise. I believe that was in The Spy Who Shagged Me when she pops up on the beach. And then I think Austin's wearing it as well. When you come inside, now this is something I've never really seen before from Warner Brothers, but this is this right here. This is a certificate of authenticity, which I think is really awesome. And I also put the 6 digital codes in here as well, which have been given away. It's a 1-disc set, so don't expect the previously released Blu-ray or anything like that. Don't love the interior artwork, but that's fine. I get what they're going for. I like the light blue color. Obviously, James Bond is wearing that throughout a lot of the film. That's his beach outfit. He looks handsome in the light blue. And I'll be comparing that to the first film here in my Sean Connery Blu-ray collection. So I happen to have the previously released Blu-ray, which does have some issues, especially when you compare it to the 4K Blu-ray. We'll start it off with the extras. The extras are exactly the same, except for one extra that is on the previously released Blu-ray, a restoration featurette, I believe, for back in the DVD day, so it's an old featurette, but that's the only one that got cut from this. So everything else carries over to the 4K Blu-ray. It's a 1-disc set, so all the extras are on the 4K Blu-ray. Still don't like how they organize it. They just literally carried it over, and you almost have to like decode the extras to find like the making of. Usually it would say making of documentary. No, you have to like go into MI6 dossier, and then it says looking back on Dr. No or something like that. But there's a documentary on Dr. No, which is 42 minutes long. There's like an 18-minute Terrence Young documentary. It's just all this stuff I've seen before, but I do appreciate that. We get some old trailers, old broadcast stuff in audio and video. I mean, there's plenty of extras, especially if you're a fan of Dr. No, that I can't really complain too much about. It's just, I would have liked some more, I guess. I thought maybe, we get one thing with Warner Brothers they've been doing lately is like they'll put like a 15-minute like short documentary looking at back on the film. Like Constantine had this with Keanu Reeves and the director. It would have been cool if like we got like some kind of little featurette like that for all of these Bond films, just because obviously Warner Brothers knows how important these 4Ks are, because like they put that certificate of authenticity in there. They released these steelbooks. They released the other collection as well. I just felt like the steelbooks, if you're a big fan of Bond, like this was one of the holy grails for me. I had to have this one, and Amazon truly did deliver on this. They got it here on the day they said they would, which I have to give them the compliments for that. But hey, we're here talking about those extras, and like I said, the extras are good. It's just, I've had them for years, so I can't really say that they're anything special. If you haven't had them, you know what? I think you'll enjoy them. Definitely explore them after you check out the film. Like I said, Dr. No, it's a very important film, and it's one that, hey, I think it's worth your time. But talking more about the 4K Blu-ray. Then when you get into the audio, so the old Blu-ray had a DTS HD Master Audio 5.1. I always noticed some issues around the part where, when the assassin tries to kill James Bond, but he's just sitting there waiting for him, and he's like, "You've already had your 6." There was always like an audio issue on the old DTS HD Master Audio. It also included the original mono track. Now, when you get over to the new 4K Blu-ray, you get a brand new Dolby Atmos track, and you also get the original audio as well. I'm pretty sure it's the exact same original audio. This is something that Warner Bros. Has been doing lately as well. When they release a 4K Blu-ray, all of the Clint Eastwood 4K Blu-rays that came out earlier this year, last year, think of North by Northwest and the Terminator, same thing. They would release a brand new Dolby Atmos track while also including the original audio. I love that Warner Bros. Is doing this. Have it there for the cinephiles who want to see this in the original audio while also giving us a brand new updated Dolby Atmos track. And then they did fix a lot of the audio issues with that Dolby Atmos track, so bravo for that. It's just not a Dolby Atmos track that's going to pack a lot of punch, and I didn't really expect it to. I mean, this film, like I said, made on a very low budget. It never had the greatest audio, in my opinion. The sound effects always kind of felt a little bland to me, especially like with the silencer. It doesn't stand out. It feels like a 1962 spy espionage film with a low budget. And, the Dolby Atmos track is not going to raise that value of the audio track, in my opinion, unless they completely redid the audio. No, you just wanted to come in crisp and clear. It's just not an Atmos track if you're watching the movie. It's not going to blow your socks off or anything like that, and you really shouldn't expect it to. And I think what a lot of people were probably hoping is that it was really good, and I could say it's good. I wouldn't say it's anything that's gonna, kill you or anything like that. It's nothing that, it's about what I expected is the best way to put it. Now, the visuals. Now, the old Blu-ray had this, Blu-ray was cropped, I think, at 1.67, so we're returning it to the original aspect ratio. That's already a pretty big deal right there. Now we're going to have HDR and Dolby Vision. The Blu-ray itself was never really that great. It was very faded. It was too warm. And the colors just looked a little bit unnatural. It had almost like an olive yellow tint to it, and I never really truly loved that Blu-ray, but it's an older Blu-ray, so when we came to 4K, I was just hoping that they would clean that up. I didn't expect a miracle, but overall, this is a very noticeable upgrade to 4K Blu-ray. All the colors now are going to pop off your screen. There's certain scenes in the previous release Blu-ray where it just becomes overly grainy, and there are some scenes, especially in the first third of this movie when he's in Jamaica, where you might be like, this doesn't really look too great, or even like the opening credits. You might be like, this is the colors aren't exactly as vivid and dynamic as I was hoping, but I really do think once they get to like the island and everything like that, where obviously him and Honey and he's wearing the blue, all that stuff looks great. Where they get to Dr. No's base, you never notice on the Blu-ray like the pink lighting and anything and the reflecting over James Bond's hair on the Blu-ray. No, that's just like completely gone, just completely eliminated from the Blu-ray. But when you get to the 4K Blu-ray, you notice those things again, because basically you can notice every single detail on Sean Connery's hair, while the 4K still does retain that like soft look of Dr. No that was always there. It's still there, but it's just much more sharper. The 4K is doing all the work that you would expect it to do. It's a sharper image, and then the Dolby Vision itself and the HDR10, because not too much of a difference there. They also just look fantastic. The colors are just going to look more realistic. Everything looks more realistic and natural. It's a very noticeable upgrade. This isn't like something that's a 10 out of 10 in my opinion, but the visuals are still right there, better than I ever expected. To say that, I was hoping that this would look like The Searchers or North by Northwest, other Warner Brothers properties of the time. I think that might have just been too much of a hope just because of the amount of money this movie cost to make and the source material, but still, I think they did a phenomenal job on the visuals and the audio. It's just, you know what? You got to remember, this is a $1 million film from 1962, very low budget. I imagine that the other 4Ks in this set might look a little bit better than Dr. No, but I'm still very happy with Dr. No because this looks way better than it's ever looked, and they fixed a lot of the issues from that previously released Blu-ray. So this is definitely the new definitive edition of Dr. No, in my opinion. And how would I rate this 4K Blu-ray at a score of 1 to 10? Just based on the 4K that's in this packaging and not the package as a whole, I would still give Dr. No on 4K Blu-ray a pretty damn solid 8 out of 10. But anyway, guys, that's the first of these 6 4K Blu-ray reviews. They're going to be spread out a little bit because we also have Jurassic Park coming to 4K Blu-ray again with also Dolby Vision, so you'll have reviews for that. The Nice Guys is coming to 4K Blu-ray. I want to review that as well. Dark City. So these will be spread out a little bit over the next few weeks, but hey, want to start it off with Dr. No. Let me know what you guys think. Did you guys pick up this 4K Steelbook set as well? Did you grab just the other regular collection that Warner Brothers did, which didn't really love that artwork? Let me know in the comments comment section below. And then while you guys are down there, don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Share this video if you could. We also have channel memberships, guys. So if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel, like John Doe Juggalo and Ben Rondo, you can do that. You can even become a channel director like Uncle V, Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, Nicholas Head, and Kevin Kruger. You could do that. Or you can even become a channel bankroll member like Mr. Smelly Potato. But of course, guys, if you got no money to throw our way, don't you worry about it at all. We just hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, get out those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.